In a clearinghouse, the way clearinghouses work, the New York City, what was it called? New York City Clearinghouse Association. New York Clearinghouse Association, NYCA. Okay. Has assets and liabilities. Everyone in my world always has assets and liabilities. Okay. It's set up, there are members. All the big New York banks are members of the New York Clearinghouse Association. Okay. And it's a mutual organization. There's a first among equals, and that's JP Morgan. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, but he set this thing up. Okay, and the other New York banks are all members of this. And when they establish this in the discipline way. Okay, which is to say, everyone deposits gold or some other, or currency or some other reserve. Okay, so there's reserves there. And then the clearinghouse issues clearinghouse certificates. To the credit of Bank A, Bank B, whatever. Okay. Okay, so these are actual physical notes that are representing the deposit of the bank in the clearinghouse, the deposit of these reserves. So they sort of stand for the gold. They stand for the currency. So you can see this is a money system, right? A discipline system right here. But during the day, it is not. Okay? During the day, all these people agree, all of these big banks agree, we are going to treat every due from or due to other members of the clearinghouse as something that's due from or due to the clearinghouse itself. Okay, that sounds sort of complicated. What I mean is this. All I have to worry about if I'm a member of this clearinghouse, if A, B, C, and D are all members of the clearinghouse, okay, I treat all of these things that I have to pay to other banks as something I have to pay to the clearinghouse, and all of the things that I'm being paid from other banks as something that the clearinghouse has to pay to me. So in other words, you're summing all this stuff up, you're summing it all up, and there's a net to the clearinghouse. Or from the clearinghouse, whichever it is, you know, whether the left-hand side is greater than the right-hand side. Okay? And so already there's more netting, you know, because it might be that you have a positive and a negative. I mentioned this when I was putting this up. Positive, negative, positive. Okay, so the sum is going to be less than if you did it bilaterally with each bank. That's the point. It's less than if you did it bilaterally. So during the day, there's accumulated nets to the clearinghouse. Net due from A, net due to B. Okay? These things are accumulated during the day. And physically, this is what's so wonderful about the Dunbar reading. Physically, what this means is these are actual checks. These are actual orders of payment, okay? And at the end of the day, the banks sort of add them all up, and then they go and they have a little meeting at the clearinghouse, and they say, okay, I'm actually a net, you know, I'm a net positive person today, okay? You know, yesterday I was a net negative person, and you're a net negative person. So what I would like you to do now is to give me a clearinghouse certificate, okay, for that. So let's just exchange little green pieces of paper, these liabilities of the clearinghouse. I mean, they could just be deposit accounts or something, but let's just exchange these things and call it a day and go home and then come back the next day at the clearing. Okay? So the point is that there's a credit expansion during the day that creates elasticity, and then there's a settlement at the end of the day. Elasticity, discipline. Credit expansion and settlement, elasticity and discipline at the very highest level of the system. these highest level of the system people know that they have access to this, and the people lower down don't. So they're able to sell this elasticity in a way, to allow the people who have deposits with them to have elasticity in the system because they have elasticity in the system, and so forth all the way down, so that it spreads. The whole system is elastic. The whole system is able to operate as a credit system because the clearinghouse operates as a credit system during the day. Anyway, sometimes there's 3-day settlement too. This is why this issue of how long the float is out there is kind of important, okay? Because it doesn't necessarily settle every day. I was just making that as a hypothetical. So there's credit expansion and then clearing. Okay, so A owes here. Suppose, but it's a money system. Okay, so suppose A doesn't have any clearinghouse certificates. Okay, they've been running deficits for a couple of days, and they've run all the way down. They don't have any more clearinghouse certificates. Now what? Okay, now what is it becomes bilateral. Okay, A needs to borrow a clearinghouse certificate from somebody. Okay, and that would be J.P. Morgan, who runs the clearinghouse. Okay, for example. Okay, so there's a hierarchy there as well. That if you can't meet your clearing at the end, then you borrow from some member, and that is one final net due, okay? And so that helps to clear. And you know who is positive member. You know, you see this. So you know that you could easily borrow from B because they have extra money coming into them. So you could, in fact, borrow from B if they're willing to lend to you. And so it can be arranged between the bankers as an IOU. So that's one way to clear at the end of the day if you don't have any money, banker's money. But suppose no one will lend you money because they think actually you're insolvent. Okay, you're not just illiquid, you're insolvent. Okay, in that case, all of these payments are mutual obligations of all the members of the clearinghouse. That's how it's set up. It's a mutual system. So that this gold here, okay, goes to satisfy all the people who are owed money by the clearinghouse pro rata. Okay, and so there will be losses, but they will be spread among all of the members with this person taken out. Okay, and then they're gone. You know, they're banished. They no longer exist. They're not a part of this clearing system anymore. It doesn't happen very often, but so there's another principle there that is important for banking and is used many times, which is that the credit of the aggregate of a group of banks that jointly and severally insure something is better than the credit of any individual bank. Okay? That this clearinghouse credit is better than the credit of any of the bilateral people there. It's backed by everyone. So this net from A, okay, so there's the first thing that could be done is pay in clearinghouse certificates, okay, or borrow from another member. Okay, maybe from B, since they're a positive member, okay, or default, be banished to the outer ring of hell.